Memo paraphrased video script. In 1864, in the basement of a Georgia plantation, **** 23 children were discovered locked away ***. They all shared the same striking, distinctive features, ***, pale green eyes, high cheekbones, and auburn hair streaked with gold ***. When Union soldiers in Burke County forced open the iron doors of Thornhill Estate, these children were found huddling in the darkness. Some were as young as 4, while others were nearing adolescence. The eldest, a 13-year-old girl, relayed information to the officers that caused veteran soldiers to feel physically ill. "Mistress says we are her blood, her legacy. We cannot leave," she stated. The incident is mentioned only once in the military records of the 34th Massachusetts Infantry, in a letter marked confidential and hidden in regimental archives for over a century. Local histories of Burke County completely omit any mention of Thornhill Estate, acting as if both the plantation and its mistress had never existed. But they were real. And what Catherine Thornhill created during the ** 16 years ** between her husband's death and the arrival of federal troops stands as one of the most disturbing chapters in American history. It was a ** systematic breeding program ** designed to produce generations of enslaved people who would be genetically tied to their owner, ensuring they could never break free of their bondage. Before we delve deeper into the story of Catherine Thornhill and the nightmare she constructed in rural Georgia, I have a request for you. If this story is making your skin crawl, please ** hit that subscribe button now **. This channel explores the darkest corners of American history, the secrets buried in forgotten military records and courthouse basements, the stories they choose not to teach in schools. I'd also love to know where you are listening from. ***, drop a comment ** with your city or state. Are you near Burke County, Georgia? Does your own town hold similar buried secrets from its past? Let's uncover them together. #snowflake #the widow and the plan. Now, let's return to the beginning, a cold February morning in 1847, when a young widow inherited a failing plantation and conceived a multi-generational plan that would haunt Georgia. The winter that Catherine Danforth Thornhill buried her husband was the coldest Burke County had experienced in 2 decades. Thornhill Estate was situated 7 miles southwest of the county seat, Waynesboro, on ***1 700 acres of red clay soil ***. In 1847, while Burke County was cotton country, it was less prosperous than the Black Belt regions farther west. The land here was worn out, exhausted by decades of single-crop farming. Plantations that had thrived in the 1820s were struggling by the 1840s, caught between rising costs and falling cotton prices. The Mexican War had drawn away laborers, and the talk of territorial expansion created bitter divisions within communities. Thornhill Estate was once among the most successful properties in the area. Jonathan Thornhill, Catherine's late husband, had inherited it from his father in 1838, along with ** 42 enslaved workers **, manageable debt, and adequate equipment. But Jonathan was an enthusiastic gambler and a poor manager. By the time a winter fever claimed him in February 1847, the estate was heavily mortgaged. The fields produced barely enough to feed the workers, and creditors were circling like buzzards. Catherine was 28 when she was widowed. She had married Jonathan at 19, a strategic arrangement by her father, Theodore Danforth, a prominent Augusta merchant. The Danforths were old Georgia money, descendants of settlers from the 1730s. Educated by private tutors, speaking passable French, Catherine had been raised with the expectation of managing a substantial household. What she had not expected was to inherit a failing plantation saddled with crushing debts, or to deal with a 16-year-old son who regarded her with something close to hatred. Richard Thornhill was Jonathan's son from his first marriage. His mother died giving birth to him in 1831, and Jonathan had remarried 5 years later. Richard had never accepted Catherine, seeing her as an interloper who replaced his real mother. He was a bookish, sullen boy who preferred avoiding both his stepmother and the practical work of the plantation by spending most of his time in the small library. Catherine considered him weak, impractical, and far too sentimental regarding the enslaved workers. Once, he had suggested they be taught to read, an idea so dangerous that Catherine immediately forbade him from mentioning it again. The main house, a two-story whitewashed brick structure with 6 columns across the front portico, reflected the plantation's declining fortunes. It had been built in 1805 in the Federal style. Paint was peeling from the window frames, and the roof leaked in 3 places. The furniture was a mix of inherited family pieces and cheaper replacements bought after the good pieces had been sold to cover gambling debts. Behind the main house stood the overseer's cottage, the dairy, the smokehouse, and the kitchen building, all in similar states of disrepair. Farther back, past a line of Spanish moss-draped live oaks, were the quarters where the enslaved population resided. In 1847, ** 31 people remained on the property ** 7 children, 13 women, and 11 men. Over the previous 3 years, 16 others had been sold off to satisfy Jonathan's creditors. Those who remained knew more sales were inevitable. Fear hung over the quarters like fog over the Savannah River. # electric light bulb, a monstrous solution. Catherine spent the first month following Jonathan's death in a state of controlled fury. She met with Ambrose Talbot, the estate's lawyer, who laid out her options bluntly: ** sell the property ** and the remaining workers to settle the debts and perhaps have enough left to live modestly under her father's roof in Augusta, or ** find a way to make the plantation profitable again **, which Talbot considered highly unlikely given the depleted resources and the state of the cotton market. Neither option was acceptable to Catherine. Returning to Augusta meant admitting failure, living as a dependent spinster in her father's house, forever marked as the widow who lost her inheritance. Yet, she also understood that traditional plantation management would not save Thornhill Estate. The land was worn out, the equipment was old, and the remaining enslaved workers were too few to profitably work the cotton fields, and she lacked the funds to buy more. It was during one of her sleepless nights, examining the estate's account books by candlelight, that Catherine formulated her plan. The idea arrived with the cold logic born of desperation. If she couldn't afford to * buy * workers, she would ** breed them **. But not in the haphazard way most plantations operated, offering minor incentives for enslaved couples to have children and then waiting 15 years for them to become productive laborers. No, Catherine envisioned something far more ** controlled, more systematic **. She would create a workforce biologically tied to the estate, who could never be sold because they were her own descendants, and who would possess an innate loyalty to the plantation because it was literally in their blood. The plan was monstrous, but to Catherine, it was elegant. She was still young enough to bear children. She would select the healthiest, strongest men among the enslaved population and conceive children with them. These children would be raised knowing their parentage, given slightly better treatment to ensure their loyalty, and upon reaching maturity, they would be paired with enslaved women to produce the next generation. Catherine calculated that within 20 years, she could have a workforce of 50 or more, all bound to Thornhill Estate by ties deeper than legal ownership. # cultivation records. She began keeping a journal to detail the plan. This was no emotional diary, Catherine was too practical for that. Instead, she created what she termed her ** cultivation records, ** filled with calculations, observations, and plans. To maintain secrecy, she wrote in a simple substitution cipher, replacing key words with innocuous agricultural terms. Children became ***, seedlings ***, pregnancies were ***, plantings ***, and the selected men were ***, rootstock ***. The journal pages were covered with diagrams that resembled livestock breeding charts, which is essentially what they documented. Catherine's first selection was ***, Isaac ***, a 24-year-old man, known for his steady temperament and physical strength, born on the plantation. She summoned him to the main house on a March evening in 1847 after the other workers had retired. What transpired that night was recorded in Catherine's journal simply as * first planting completed with rootstock 1, weather clear and mild. * she summoned him again 3 weeks later, and then twice more before the month concluded. By April, Catherine was confident she was pregnant. She recorded this with the same emotional detachment she would note a cotton crop, * Asterisk initial cultivation successful. Anticipate harvest in December. Asterisk. # right pointing magnifying glass Richard's discovery. Richard Thornhill first suspected something was wrong with his stepmother in late May of 1847. He noticed she had stopped her morning rides around the property, claiming the heat bothered her, though the Georgia summer had just begun. She took her meals in her room more often and had dismissed her usual house servant, preferring to manage her own affairs. For a woman as concerned with appearances as Catherine, this withdrawal was highly unusual. However, it was a conversation Richard overheard in early June that truly alarmed him. He was in the library, concealed behind one of the tall bookcases, when Catherine met with *** Miriam Grayson ** in the adjacent parlor. Mrs. Grayson was the local midwife, a sharp-featured, 50-year-old woman who attended births for both enslaved and white families throughout Burke County. Richard knew her slightly. She had a reputation as a skilled practitioner who kept confidences and asked few questions. "You're certain of your condition, absolutely?" Mrs. Grayson asked in her clipped professional tone. "Quite certain," Catherine replied. "I should think sometime in early December." "And Mr. Thornhill passed in February, you said?" There was a pause. Richard pressed himself against the bookcase, hardly daring to breathe. "My late husband and I were intimate in January," Catherine stated evenly. "Shortly before his final illness." Of course, Mrs. Grayson's voice held a careful neutrality, not quite disbelief. "I'll need to examine you properly, and we should discuss the arrangements for the delivery. Will you want me here at the house?" "I will, and I'll need your discretion, Miriam." "Absolutely. You have it, as always." Richard waited for both women to leave the room before emerging from his hiding place. His hands were trembling. The math didn't add up. His father had been bedridden, racked with chills and fever, and barely conscious for the entire month of January. Richard had sat with him many nights. Intimate relations between his father and Catherine were impossible. This meant the child Catherine was carrying had been conceived after Jonathan's death, in March or April, with someone else. The implications sickened Richard. If word spread that Catherine had conceived a child out of wedlock, the scandal would destroy the last vestiges of the family's reputation. Creditors would seize the property immediately. Her father's family in Augusta would disown her. Beyond the practical fallout, Richard was appalled by the deception. Catherine planned to claim this child as his father's legitimate heir, to lie to everyone, to build her future on a foundation of fraud. He considered his options. He could directly confront Catherine, but he was only 16, and she held all legal authority over the estate. He could go to lawyer Talbot in Waynesboro, but without proof, it would be his word against Catherine's, and as a minor, his testimony carried little weight. He could write to his grandfather Danforth in Augusta, but Catherine read all outgoing mail from the estate. Instead, Richard began to watch Catherine closely, searching for evidence, trying to comprehend her plans. He noticed that she summoned Isaac to the main house regularly, always after dark, and always when the overseer was occupied elsewhere or away in town. He observed that Catherine's manner toward Isaac was different from her treatment of other enslaved workers, not kind, but less overtly hostile. She spoke to him in full sentences instead of curt commands. By July, Richard was certain Isaac was the father of Catherine's child. The realization filled him with horror, not only at the violation of legal and social boundaries, but at what it revealed about Catherine's character. She had deliberately, coldly chosen to conceive a child with an enslaved man, claim that child as her late husband's, and maintain this lie indefinitely. What kind of woman was capable of such calculated deception? # Skull the coded journal. He found part of the answer in early August during one of Catherine's rare trips to Waynesboro. Richard was searching for legal documents related to the estate, vaguely hoping to find leverage over Catherine, when he discovered a leather-bound journal hidden in a locked drawer of her writing desk. The lock was simple enough for a determined 16-year-old to pick. The journal was written in cipher, but Richard had always excelled at puzzles. Working in secret whenever Catherine was away, it took him 3 days to crack the basic substitution pattern. What he read made his blood run cold. Catherine was not merely having an affair with Isaac, She was implementing a deliberate breeding program ***. The journal detailed her plan chillingly: to conceive multiple children with carefully selected enslaved men, raise those children as part of the plantation workforce, and eventually breed those children with each other and with other enslaved people to create an expanding population of workers ***, genetically tied to Thornhill Estate and to Catherine herself ***. It contained charts, calculations of expected births over 5-year periods, notes on which men displayed desirable physical characteristics, and speculation on the heritability of traits like intelligence, strength, and temperament. It read like a manual for livestock breeders, except the livestock were human beings. Richard copied several pages of the journal, translating the cipher into plain English, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. This was the evidence. This was proof of Catherine's depravity. He could expose her, he could take this to the authorities. But that night at dinner, Catherine fixed him with those cold green eyes and asked casually, "Richard, have you been in my study recently? Some of my papers seem to have been disturbed." "No, Richard lied, his throat tight. "I keep certain documents locked away for good reason," Catherine continued, slicing her meat with precise strokes. "If I ever found that someone had violated my privacy, broken my trust in such a fundamental way, I'm afraid I would have to take serious action. Do you understand?" "Yes, Good. Because family loyalty is everything, Richard. Everything. Without it, we're simply animals tearing at each other." She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "I know you loved your father very much. I would hate for his memory to be tarnished by scandal, especially scandal that might emerge from within his own household." The threat was unmistakable. If Richard attempted to expose Catherine, she would find a way to turn it back on him, painting him as a disturbed, resentful stepson inventing lies about a grieving widow. Who would people believe? An awkward teenage boy with a known resentment toward his stepmother, or a respected plantation mistress from a prominent family? Alembic the poisoning. That night, Richard returned to his room and burned the copied pages. Yet, he continued to watch Catherine, and he began to feel progressively unwell. It started with fatigue. By September, Richard was exhausted by mid-afternoon and unable to focus on his books. His appetite declined. He developed frequent headaches that made clear thought difficult. By October, he suffered from occasional stomach pains and muscle weakness. Catherine showed enormous concern. She insisted Richard remain in bed. She personally prepared his meals, bringing him soft foods and bowls of soup. She summoned Mrs. Grayson to examine him. The midwife, who also functioned as a general medical practitioner in the absence of a proper physician, diagnosed *** nervous exhaustion complicated by possible consumption. *** She prescribed rest, fresh air when he felt strong enough, and a special tonic Catherine acquired from an Augusta pharmacy. "Tuberculosis often strikes young men of sensitive disposition," Catherine told Richard, adjusting his pillows with attentive care. "Your father had a cousin who died of it at just your age. We must be very vigilant." Richard knew better. From his hours in the library, he had read about arsenic poisoning ***. He recognized the symptoms in himself: digestive troubles, fatigue, muscle weakness. Catherine was slowly murdering him, disguising the act as a disease, eliminating the one person who knew her secret and threatened her plans. But he was too weak and too isolated to fight back or get help. The house servants obeyed Catherine's orders absolutely. The overseer seldom came to the main house. Richard's room was on the second floor, and by November, he barely had the strength to get out of bed, much less escape the property and reach Waynesboro. He made a final attempt to expose Catherine in late November, writing a letter to his grandfather, Danforth, in Augusta. It took him 3 days to compose, working in brief spurts before exhaustion overwhelmed him. He detailed the poisoning, Catherine's journal, and her breeding program. He sealed the letter and gave it to a younger house servant, a girl named Pearl, begging her to post it in Waynesboro without telling Catherine. Pearl took the letter, but, terrified of the mistress's discovery, she told Catherine. Catherine read the letter without emotion, then burned it in the fireplace in front of Richard. "You're very ill, darling," she said softly, almost tenderly. The fever is affecting your mind. You're imagining things that aren't real. It's a mercy, really, that you won't have to suffer much longer. Richard Thornhill died on December 3, 1847 3 weeks before his 17th birthday. Dr. Samuel Pritchard from Waynesboro, summoned to record the death, noted consumption as the cause, remarking that the young man had wasted away with tragic speed. Catherine wept appropriately at the funeral and wore black for a full year. 4 days after Richard's burial, Catherine gave birth to a healthy son. She named him Jonathan after her late husband and claimed he had been born slightly premature, which accounted for any questions regarding the timing. Few people in Burke County thought to count backward from the birth to Catherine's widowhood. Those who did kept their speculations private. It was not a subject for open discussion. Chart with upward trend. The program takes root. The years between 1848 and 1856 transformed Thornhill Estate in a way that seemed almost miraculous to outside observers. The plantation that had been on the verge of bankruptcy slowly stabilized. The enslaved workforce grew. Cotton production increased. Catherine Thornhill acquired a reputation as a shrewd, though somewhat reclusive, plantation mistress who managed her property with uncommon efficiency. But that efficiency came at a terrible price that no outsider witnessed. Between 1848 and 1853, Catherine gave birth 4 more times, daughters named Margaret, Abigail, and Elelonina, and another son she called Samuel. Each birth was attended only by Miriam Grayson, who was now deeply complicit in Catherine's schemes. The midwife was generously paid for her silence and services, regular fees far exceeding her normal rates, plus a small, rent-free cottage on the edge of the Thornhill property. Mrs. Grayson's role extended far beyond delivering Catherine's children. She also performed a darker function, ensuring that enslaved women on the property only gave birth to children who aligned with Catherine's careful plans. When pregnancies occurred outside Catherine's controlled pairings, and they did, as human beings will form intimate relationships and attachments even under the most oppressive circumstances, Mrs. Grayson provided abortifacients plant-based compounds that induced miscarriages. She performed these procedures in a small room behind the overseer's cottage, away from witnesses and the main house. The women subjected to these forced abortions rarely spoke of them, even to one another. The grief was unvoiceable, the trauma profound in a system that already denied them autonomy over their bodies. Yet, whispers circulated through the quarters. Stories of women who were bleeding 1 week after being pregnant the week before, who were told they had naturally lost the babies, though everyone knew Mrs. Grayson had been involved. One woman named Ruth tried to resist. In the spring of 1851, she was 5 months pregnant when Catherine discovered the father was a young field hand named Samuel, with whom Ruth had a genuine attachment, not the man Catherine had designated for her. Catherine immediately ordered Mrs. Grayson to terminate the pregnancy. Ruth fled. She ran nearly 4 miles into the pine forests southwest of the plantation before the overseer's dogs tracked her down. She was dragged back to Thornhill Estate and forcibly held down by 2 men while Mrs. Grayson administered the abortifacient compounds. Ruth survived the physical ordeal, but something fundamental inside her broke. Afterward, she worked mechanically, spoke rarely, and died 2 years later during a fever outbreak that swept through the quarters. She was 24 years old. Family man woman girl boy the special children. Ruth's tragedy was one of many. By 1856, Catherine's program had produced 7 of her own children, all raised in a strange liminal space. They were legally enslaved. Catherine had registered them as children born to enslaved women on the property, which gave her legal ownership, but in practice, they lived in the main house, received informal education from Catherine herself, wore decent clothing, and ate better food than the other enslaved children. Young Jonathan, the eldest, was 8 years old in 1856. He was a quiet, serious child who strongly resembled Catherine, the same sharp features, the same auburn hair, the same green eyes. He had no memory of his father, Isaac, who had been sold to a plantation in Alabama in 1849. Once Isaac's purpose was served, Catherine viewed his presence as a complication. The money from his sale helped pay down some of the estate's remaining debts. The younger children were unaware of their true parentage. Catherine told them they were fortunate orphans she had taken into her household out of Christian charity. She taught them to write and read, a dangerous illegality in Georgia, where teaching enslaved people literacy was prohibited by law. But Catherine was confident no outsider would ever enter her home and discover what she was teaching them. She was grooming them, preparing them for the next phase of her plan. That phase required patience. The children needed to reach physical maturity before they could be used for breeding. Catherine continued her meticulous record-keeping, tracking their temperaments, their health, and their growth. She noted which children seemed more intelligent, which displayed physical strength, and which were more compliant. She was planning pairings decades in advance. In the interim, she continued to bear children of her own. 3 more were born between 1854 and 1856, a daughter named Caroline, and sons called Henry and William. Each had a different father, carefully selected from among the enslaved men on the property. Catherine's criteria were ruthlessly practical: good eyesight, strength, decent teeth, physical health, and no obvious impairments. She had no interest in their characters or personalities. In her mind, they were simply genetic material to be utilized. The men themselves had no choice. When Catherine summoned them to the main house, they came, knowing refusal would result in sale or brutal punishment. Some understood what was happening, that the children Catherine bore would be their biological offspring, even as those children would be raised to view Catherine as their benefactor and savior. The psychological torture of this situation was extreme. They were forced to become fathers to children they could never protect, never parent, and never acknowledge. One man, Thomas married to a woman named Hannah in the quarters, was summoned to the main house in 1855. Hannah was pregnant with their first child. When Thomas realized Catherine intended to use him for breeding, he attempted to refuse. Virgil Kane, the brutal overseer, had Thomas whipped in front of the assembled enslaved population, **39 lashes** that left his back scarred for life. Then Catherine had him brought to the main house anyway. Thomas complied. He had no alternative. He never spoke to Hannah about what happened in the main house, and Hannah never asked. Some knowledge was too poisonous to voice. The abomination and the seeds of destruction. By 1856, Thornhill Estate housed a population that looked normal superficially, but was structured according to Catherine's twisted logic. There were the field workers, about 20 adults and their children, who worked the corn and cotton under the overseer's supervision. There were the house servants, 1 elderly man and 3 women, who maintained the domestic space, cleaned, and cooked. And then there were Catherine's special children 10 in total by 1856, ranging from infancy up to 8 years old. These children occupied a strange place in the plantation hierarchy. The other enslaved people pitied them for what they represented, but also resented them for their privileges. On some level, everyone in the quarters understood Catherine's actions. They lacked the terminology for eugenics or breeding programs, but they recognized the pattern. They saw how Catherine kept detailed records of the children, periodically measured them, and noted their development in her locked journal. They waited with horrified anticipation for what would happen when these children reached adulthood. Because Catherine's intent was clear in subtle instructions and comments. These children were being raised to produce the next generation of workers. They were instruments in Catherine's long-term goal to create a workforce that could never be sold, could never leave, because they were ** genetically bound to her and to Thornhill Estate **. It was an abomination disguised as innovation. But in the isolated world of a rural Georgia plantation in the 1850s, where absolute power was concentrated in the hands of the property owner and there was no outside oversight, Catherine was able to pursue her vision without interference. Lawyer Talbot in Waynesboro, who handled the estate's legal affairs and thus had access to records that might raise questions, was the only potential threat. But Talbot was a practical man who valued profitable clients. By 1856, Thornhill Estate was becoming profitable. Debts were being paid down. Cotton yields were improving. The workforce was growing through Catherine's breeding program at no acquisition cost. Talbot asked no uncomfortable questions because Catherine's success benefited him. The secrecy was maintained by the plantation's isolation. Thornhill Estate was 7 miles from Waynesboro, connected by a rough road often impassable in winter. Neighbors were few, the nearest plantation 3 miles away. Catherine rarely entertained and discouraged social calls. When she did interact with other plantation families, usually at occasional gatherings in Waynesboro or at church on Sundays, she presented herself as a proper widow managing her late husband's property with practical wisdom and Christian virtue. No one suspected the systematic horror taking place behind the whitewashed brick walls of the main house and in the quarters beyond the oak trees. And even if they had suspected, would they have cared? This was 1850s Georgia, a society founded on the brutal exploitation of enslaved labor. Catherine's program was more coldly calculated and systematic than most, but it was not fundamentally different in ** from what occurred on thousands of other southern plantations. This was perhaps the most disturbing element of the entire situation. Catherine's breeding program was monstrous, but it was also logical within the framework of a society that already treated human beings as property to be bred, sold, and bought at will. She had simply taken the underlying logic of slavery and followed it to one of its most horrifying conclusions. However, systems built on such profound injustice inherently carry the seeds of their own destruction. Change was coming to the entire South and to Georgia, though in 1856, few could imagine how violently or how soon it would arrive. Framed picture the Heritage Room. The late 1850s brought increased tensions to all of Georgia and Burke County. The question of slavery's expansion into new territories dominated national politics. The violence in Kansas Territory, where anti-slavery and pro-slavery settlers were literally killing each other, was discussed in anxious tones at the Waynesboro courthouse. The 1856 presidential election, which put James Buchanan in office, did little to resolve the fundamental conflicts tearing the country apart. Catherine paid little mind to politics. Her focus remained fixed on her long-term program and Thornhill Estate. By 1859, her eldest children were nearing adolescence. Elelonina was 10, Jonathan was 11, Abigail was 9. They were still too young for the breeding phase of Catherine's plan, but she was already preparing, already selecting which of the enslaved young women would be appropriate partners when the time came. It was during this period that Catherine constructed what she called the ** Heritage Room ** in a previously unused section of the mansion's east wing. She informed the house servants it would be a storage space for memorabilia and family records. In reality, it was a shrine to her breeding program. The room was windowless, lit by oil lamps, with walls lined with shelves and a large table in the center. On the shelves, Catherine stored her coded journals, 3 leather-bound volumes by 1859, chronicling every pairing, every birth, and every observation about the children's development. She also kept small glass vials, each labeled with a date and a name, containing locks of hair from each child. These samples were organized in rows by parentage and generation, a physical archive of her genetic experiments. On the table, Catherine had drawn elaborate family trees in ink, showing not actual family relationships, but her ** planned pairings for future generations **. Lines connected names with notations about anticipated outcomes. ****. Would you like me to focus on a particular section of this paraphrased script or help you plan the next video in this series?